ready to scream? For ice cream? That's right, folks. We are back in the kitchen. God, I wish I had my apron. And today, we're making ice cream. But if we want to do that, we need to understand just what is ice cream exactly. Well, generally, ice cream consists of 4 ingredients: dairy, sugar, vanilla, and air. Milk and sugar give it its signature creamy and sweet flavors, respectively, and I promise I'll talk about the air part later, but the most important part, by far, is the flavor. Eating ice cream with 0 added flavorings is kind of like eating pancakes without even adding any butter. I mean, sure, you could do it that way, but you'd be completely missing the point. So today, I'm not going to be making just regular old vanilla or strawberry. Oh, no. I'm living in Japan, so I'm going to be going around town and seeing what special flavors I can or can't scare up. So with that, I'm off. So first things first, I swung by my local grocery store. Being that I live in the smallest town on a remote island, the selections are comparatively limited to other places in Japan, but I still managed to find some interesting ingredients. After that, though, I still wasn't super satisfied with my haul, so I swung by the local souvenir shop to see if I couldn't suss out something a bit more exciting. And with that, here's what I got. First, using stuff I already had in my house, we have caramel coffee. I personally don't drink this stuff, but the guy who rented the house before me left me some, so I gotta use it somehow. Next, made from ingredients I found at the grocery store, we have a classic pumpkin bars. I'll be using a kabocha, which is the Japanese variety of a pumpkin. Following that, I have peanut butter and blueberry jelly on raisin bread. Coming in at number 4, we have double ginger made using regular ginger, known as shoga, and Japanese ginger, called myoga. I honestly don't know what the difference is supposed to be. The final flavor I got from the store is honey chocolate banana, because why not? When I went to the souvenir shop, I'm going to be honest, I was only after this bag of brown sugar walnuts because I love them, so they're going to be a flavor all on their own. But to round things out, I was intrigued by this so-called rocket candy. I have no idea what flavor rocket candy would be, but if you didn't know, Tanegashima, the island I live on, is home to Japan's largest rocket launch site, so rockets are kind of a big deal here. It's also famous for sweet potatoes, so I bought this packet of sweet potato cookies because I'm an adult and I can. Okay, so for now we'll let those sit and await their fate, but it's time to make the ice cream base. Now, if you are following along at home, you can find the specific amounts for the ingredients in the description, but since I'm making 7 flavors, I'm probably going to be doing a lot more than you'll want. We're going to mix together the cream, milk, sugar, and salt if you want to. I'm going to do this all in a pot and then stir it until it simmers so that it's nice and perfectly mixed together, but if you don't want to go that extra mile, feel free to just mix it together in a bowl. It shouldn't make a huge difference. So next up is arguably the most important part of the process, the flavoring. Now I could toss some vanilla in there and call it good, that'd be fine, but there are other ways to add flavorings. For example, if I took this chocolate bar, melted it down, tossed it in there, that would make chocolate ice cream. Or if I took this chocolate, made it into fudge ribbons, and mixed it in with the ice cream while it was freezing, that'd make mousse tracks. Or if I crumbled it down and put it on the ice cream after it was already done freezing, that would be ice cream with a chocolate chip topping. All 3 of these methods, despite using very similar ingredients, produce very different flavors of ice cream. And depending on what ingredients and flavorings you want to use, there can be pros and cons to adding them in different stages of the process. Now, since I'm making 7 different flavors, this is going to get real complicated, so I hope you'll forgive me if I kick that can down the road and show you how I'll add the flavors after I show you how to freeze the ice cream. Okay, we are finally approaching the last stages of the process, and now it's time to talk about the final ingredient, air. If I were to just take this and throw it in the freezer, it would come out as hard as a rock. Take a look at this right here. This is the ice cream that I ate at the start of the video, except I let it melt and therefore I let all the air escape and then refroze it. And look, while there are some bubbles still trapped in there, it's basically hard as a rock. So if we want to get ice cream and not just sweetened frozen milk, we're going to need to shake it up as it freezes. This way, a bunch of tiny bubbles will enter the mixture as it freezes, and it'll break up any rigid, hard crystalline structure that it might want to form. And to do that, we're going to want ice, salt, and a bigger bag. First things first, fill the big bag with ice. Next, we're going to add a whole bunch of salt. This will lower the temperature of the ice, allowing it to freeze our ice cream mixture more quickly. I would recommend you use rock salt because it's cheaper, but I don't have that, so oops. Mix all that around. And then we add our ice cream. Now you want to make sure that there is some air in the bag. You don't need a whole lot, but you don't want to vacuum seal it either because you want that air to get into the ice cream. The other thing is it does help to refrigerate the ice cream beforehand so it's as cold as possible, so it takes as little time as possible to actually freeze it once you put it in the bag. All right, for this next part, I'd recommend wearing gloves, but the goal of this is not to freeze it all the way completely through and get ready to eat ice cream. Instead, the goal is to just freeze it enough so it's solid enough that if you set it in the freezer, the bubbles can't escape. So with that, time to shake. Or maybe wrap it in a towel because the condensation will soak through your gloves and it won't even matter. Okay, I've been shaking this thing around for about 20 minutes, and if you've been doing it right, and if the ice cream has been in contact with the ice, and there's the proper amount of salt and all that good stuff, it should be about to this point. You see how it's not flowing? It's dropping. Looks kind of gross, but you see the point, right? It's finally a solid. So this means it is ready to go into the freezer. Because while it's not the exact consistency we want it to be yet, it's firm enough so that any bubbles that are now trapped inside won't be able to escape if we just leave it sitting in a freezer. This is also the point where we add any final non-topping flavorings that we want before we toss it in the freezer. And speaking about flavorings, it's high time I told you about how I made all of them. First off, for the coffee caramel, I made the coffee by boiling some water and then running it through this drip thing. I don't know what the frick this is. Then I boiled the coffee down to try to get it into as concentrated of a syrup as possible. I sure hope I didn't burn anything. And then for the caramel syrup, I melted some sugar down until it broke down into a lovely caramel flavor, threw some butter in it for creaminess, but I wasn't sure how to make caramel syrup, just hard caramel. So I threw some milk in and hopefully it made the caramel syrupy enough. Now, as I mentioned a bit before, the time in which you add the flavorings is important. I added the coffee straight to the base before it got frozen because I want the flavor to be all throughout the ice cream. But I added the caramel after I was done shaking it, but before I put it in the freezer because I wanted caramel syrup ribbons to be mixed in, but not homogeneously mixed in with the entire ice cream. And as a side note, it seems it was not syrupy enough because dang, it hardened up in there. And our next flavor is pumpkin bars. If you want to know exactly how I made the batter and the actual bars themselves, you can go check that out in the description below because I made an entire video dedicated to that. But as you can see here, I put some of the batter into the base itself, and then I put pieces of the actual cake into the ice cream after I had already shaken it in the bag with the ice, but before I put it in the freezer. The logic behind adding it in this part of the process is that it's already kind of frozen, so it won't soak into the cake and make it all soggy in the final product, but it's still liquid enough that you can mix it in. Unfortunately, as you can see here, for whatever reason, it didn't really freeze too well, even though it was in the same bag with other flavors that froze really well, so we'll see how it turns out. For the peanut butter and jelly, it was easy enough to just scoop the peanut butter into the base at the start. And then for the bread part of the sandwich, I took my loaf of raisin bread, which, life hack, if you are living alone and you cannot eat an entire loaf of bread all by itself before it goes bad, throw it in the freezer. Because it was in the freezer, it also made it really easy to slice super thin. So I toasted that and then broke it up into little toast crumbles. Finally, I mixed the toast crumbles together with the jelly and then tossed it into the ice cream right before I put it in the freezer. For the double ginger, I was a little apprehensive about how to actually prepare this, but I figured the best way to go about it, or the only way to go about it, would be to just blend it up with the ice cream base and hope for the best. Honey chocolate banana. This one was an interesting one. Adding honey to the base was obviously easy, but I tried to get clever and make chocolate-covered banana chunks to put in. So I cut up the bananas and then tried to melt the chocolate. I definitely should have used a double boiler because I melted it one time and it was too spread out, and then I tried melting it again, all pooled up, but then I realized I was probably just burning it, so I just kind of mixed it with the bananas, and then it thawed out the bananas, and I just threw it all in and hoped for the best. For the brown sugar coated walnuts, first I tried blending up most of them as fine as possible so I could mix them in with the base and get their flavor imparted into the base as well. And then I took the remaining few and then chopped them up a little bit so there'd be big bits of walnuts to chew on in the ice cream. Wrapping it up with the rocket flavor candy, finally taking the rocket flavor candy out of its wrapper, you see it's this weird like ball thing. I had one. I honestly can't even describe the flavor. It's just like sugary. In any case, I decided to melt them into the base, and I'm going to add the crumbled sweet potato cookies after I take it out of the freezer, just to make sure they don't get soggy and I get that nice crunchy mouthfeel. Okie dokie, the ice cream has been freezing all night long, and so hopefully it's all done. Now for the final step, the taste test. For the taste test, I have been preparing a numeric ranking system to judge the flavors by. A 1 would be something that I would consider just throwing out instead of eating the whole thing. A 2 is something that's sorely lacking but not terrible. A 3 is something that is not overly great but at the same time not terrible. If it gets a 4, it means I'd be happy eating it in an ice cream shop. And a 5 means that it's a new favorite flavor and it's something that I would absolutely want to eat again. So starting in order, let's grab the caramel coffee. Okay, first I want to just temper anyone's expectations. If you're freezing ice cream in a bag like this, it's not gonna look good. You're gonna need to use a machine if you want it to look good, but the flavor should be fine. The caramel's kind of solid, that's not good. Oh, so the coffee flavor was too strong, I think. It was too sharp, if that makes any sense. It was definitely there. I feel like I might have burnt it a little bit, I'm not sure. Obviously, as I showed you with the caramel earlier, it wasn't syrupy enough, so when it got cold, it froze up, and it's still kind of stuck in my teeth like one of those caramel apple lollipops. So I'm gonna give this one a high 2 out of 5. Could definitely use some work, but it's not awful. All right, next up we got pumpkin bars. If you'll notice, it is a lot harder than the last one. I'm sure a few of you noticed when I was adding the actual pumpkin bar bits, but sometimes depending on what flavoring and how much flavoring you add, it doesn't freeze as readily as some of the other flavors. So even though this was in with some other flavors that got really frozen, it didn't. But without any further ado, yeah, that's a 5, no doubt in my mind. Sometimes it is best to not stray from the recipe. The batter mixed in with the base of the ice cream had a wonderful pumpkin-y flavor. And luckily, even though it was still pretty liquidy when I put the pumpkin cake bits in, they didn't completely get soggy and absorb all of the ice cream. And it had this wonderful balance of cake texture to ice cream flavor. 5 out of 5, would absolutely recommend. All right, next up we have peanut butter and blueberry jelly sandwich. And this one did not want to freeze all the way. I guess that's what I get for putting it on the door of my freezer. But, okay, so one thing I was afraid of was the peanut butter and jelly flavors mixing together and kind of being non-distinct. Luckily, that did not happen. However, what did happen that I was afraid of was that the jelly soaked into the toast pieces, so they're no longer crunchy at all, which kind of was to be expected. I think if I were to improve this flavor, I would take the toast and just sprinkle it on top at the end instead of putting it in on any part of the freezing process, but it's good enough to be a 4 out of 5. Okay, I'm properly afraid of this one. Double ginger. I have no idea how this is going to go down, but oh God. Oh. Okay. 1 out of 5. I will not be finishing this. I will be throwing it away. I guess first off we have the non-Japanese ginger, the shoga, which generally is not a terrible flavor, but the fact that there's just so much and it's the only flavor here, like it's a seasoning for a reason. It's not supposed to be the main flavor of something. And then the miyoga, I 100% understand why my Japanese friend was like, you're putting that in ice cream because it's for salads. It's not a sweet thing. So you get attacked by this strong ginger flavor up front, and then this Japanese ginger is basically the shredded lettuce aftertaste following that. So awful. Do not make this. 1 out of 5. Okay, we are over halfway there. Next up on the list, we have honey chocolate banana. All things that I enjoy. Okay, so first thing I noticed was that the Japanese honey doesn't taste like the American clover honey that I'm used to. It almost has an apple, fruity kind of flavor to it. So that was different, unexpected. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing or a better thing, but just a different thing. Of course, I was unable to coat the bananas in chocolate, and I think that would have kind of helped with the experience and the mouthfeel a lot. But overall, these 3 flavors, all good. Luckily, the chocolate was not burnt, or at least it didn't taste like it. So I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it, but maybe if the chocolate covered the bananas properly and they were more evenly mixed out, it would be a 5, but I'm satisfied with a 4 for now. Okie dokie, the penultimate flavor, the brown sugar walnuts. I emptied an entire bag into this, so I hope to God it's good. Okay, so does taste like brown sugar walnuts. I do like that a lot. The big noticeable problem, I think, is if you can kind of see what's left over here, there's just little bits of walnut in here. And it kind of has that problem that walnuts have, that when you're eating them, they break up in these little tiny pieces and they get everywhere within your mouth. And it's not a very pleasant feeling. So I think if I were to more finely grind the walnuts into little tiny specks and mix that in with the ice cream base, it would be a lot more pleasant because the bigger chunks inside wouldn't create as much of these little specks. But overall, I do enjoy it. Not my favorite, not the best experience, but I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I'd eat this if it was in an ice cream shop. Okay, last and maybe not least, we have the rocket flavor ice cream. So I had one of those rocket candies earlier. It seemed like a basic, just sugar-based candy, and I have not eaten these sweet potato cookies, so we'll see how they work together. Yeah. Like I was alluding to earlier, I mean, I don't really know what the candy is supposed to be tasting like. It's just sweet, and in my opinion, just straight up sweet. Just eating sugar is not a very good way to, burn these calories, basically. The cookie on top did give a kind of a nice texture, and the taste was fine. I'm not particularly fond of sweet potatoes. I'll give it a 2. I'm not too impressed at all. It's kind of boring. There's not much going on. Sorry, Tanegashima. I'm not liking it that much. Well, that's about it, and I am now the proud owner of Too Much Ice Cream. That took an ungodly amount of time to finish, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it gave you a good idea of what kind of flavors and what kind of ice cream you can make yourself. If you like what you saw and you'd like to see more cool ideas from me, you can, of course, subscribe down below, or if you want to chat with me live about any of this or anything else, really, feel free to swing by my Twitch. I also, of course, have a Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Those are all fun places, too. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.